Okay, right. We've got the Eno Lab servos fitted finally. It did take a bit more tinkering than I expected, to be honest, but they're all in there. Now with the two front servos, I've actually used some stainless steel bolts because they've got a slightly bigger head, and I did use washers, just little ones. Try and get this so you can see it a bit more. Hopefully you can a bit. Right there. Them two were fine. You only had to take a little bit out of them holes. The rear one I did have to take quite a bit more out. I don't quite know, that's just the way them holes were drilled, I'm afraid, but they won't come out, so don't worry, that's absolutely fine. And yet again I've used stainless steel screws and a stainless steel screw in the bottom with washers. They're not going to come out. Just nip them up, let the thread lock do its job, because if you do these up too tight, them tabs, they're not gonna like it. They will split, most likely split, or squish and just deform. So just nip them up a tiny bit. Now you may have noticed I've used a stainless steel screw set on this. There's nothing wrong with the aligned screws on this kit, and it was nice as well because none of them were thread locked. But I got these for nothing even, from Screws for RC. I got them as a trial, so to test them out, and so far they're pretty good, to be honest. They are pretty good, and they're a lot cheaper than the RC screws. I will be doing an order for them at some point. What else is there really? I'm going to go ahead, all these, they need to be taken out, thread locked, etc., because they're just loose. I've just taken them all out both sides. Now I've put one there as well, even though it's not really needed, but I thought I might as well, I've got tons left over. I'll put one in there through the bearing block. Don't forget the canopy posts go in this center one here. And what you want to do is, before you fit these servos, before you fit them inside these bearing blocks, is I've just got a cheap servo tester, and that centers it, etc. Just get them all center and then get these arms and try and get them as level as possible on all three servos. You should be able to see them just there. 1, 2, 3. And note the way the balls sit. That ball should be pretty much in line with the main shaft. This one with the main shaft, which it is, and these two going towards the back of the helicopter, well, towards the main shaft. Now don't do them up too tight again, just nip them, and then you put a bit of thread lock on the back of the screw, and then put a nut on. Hopefully you can see that. Just put the nut on, get a pair of needle nose pliers and just nip that nut up. The next thing I'm going to be doing now is obviously taking all these bolts out and thread locking them, but first, lucky for me, I have under this towel I have a glass desk, so it is very nice to get these frames as square as possible and level. What you want to do is loosen up all of these bolts, and then these ones on the main bearing block, you want to get these frames level, and then just I would say put the main shaft in, and then do them all up, but try and do them in a sort of a cross pattern, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the other side. And once you've done that, take one out one by one and put a bit of thread lock and put it back in. That way you don't disturb the bearing blocks. But before you do that, you want to make sure that these servos, the screws are just a little bit loose so these blocks can move. And then once you've done all that, then do up the servos and do up the rest of the screws. But what you want to make sure is this main shaft is, you don't have to put force to try and get it through these bearing blocks, because that way, you know, one of the bearing blocks is off a little bit. the shaft should look like this once these are all done up and it's all lined up squared. It should literally just drop straight in. That, if I let go of it, it just drops straight in, so that's totally smooth and free. You do not want it so it's like and you're trying to get it through. What I'm going to do is just finish this off. I'm going to take the battery tray, I'll tell you what, I'll quickly take it off now because I have unscrewed it. Take the front of the battery tray off just so we've got plenty of room, because you can put that on last, that's fine. Now with the motor, I've just about got enough room to fit the motor inside whilst the servos are in there, so I can get the motor in after I've done all the servos, which is nice, because what you need to do is make sure this pinion's obviously meshed up against the main gear correctly. Now I've lined up the main gear, I've put it all in, and the pinion to have about 1 mil above the main gear, sort of, so it's like about like that roughly. You want this pinion on this motor to sit, hang on, to sit roughly 4.5 mil from the top of this motor to the start of the pinion. And that's just roughly, that's 4.6 mil. And when you, I'll tell you what, I'll take this off because I know where it's got to sit. Now you'll find on this shaft also there's no flat spot. There's nothing to worry about. The best thing to do, which I've always done and it's never come off, and you only have to use a slight bit of heat to get the pinion off, saves you grinding a flat spot, is just use some of the, you should get it in the kit, the R48. And what you want to do is just, yet again, get your toothpick and put a little bit inside the pinion, inside. You probably only need about, I'd say, two decent sized drips, and that's plenty. And then put it over the shaft. Now, and then put it over the shaft, and don't use too much because it will go everywhere. Now I wouldn't put it on the shaft and then put the pinion on, because it just all oozes out everywhere, and you do not want any of that in that motor, because you might as well throw it away otherwise. Now when you do it, you want to do it as fast as you possibly can, because this stuff will dry within seconds. As soon as you get that over, just hold it there and try and hold it whilst you nip that grub screw up. So something like that, and make sure obviously it's the right height. It hasn't got to be spot on 4.6, as long as it's a few points in between. And that's about it really. So I'm going to go ahead, get the motor fitted. I'm just going to test fit the main gear just to make sure we've got correct mesh and backlash, etc. And then I'm gonna take the main gear back out, make sure all the motor bolts are done up. There should only be 2, and then get these frames square and do all the frame bolts up with thread lock. And I should have mentioned this on my other video, use blue thread locker. It's maybe in a red bottle, but it's blue, as in medium strength, as in removable thread locker. Do not use this stuff, because you'll never get this heli apart otherwise. You might as well just buy another one, and never use red. That's about it. I'll speak to you later. Bye.